What is the animation? My final animation is the final outcome produced from the final major project that had the theme of paradox. My final animation was produced as an animated trailer for a 2D game that used the animation techniques learned throughout the year and this unit. How I came up with the idea. The idea that was used for my final animation came from the research that I had undertaken and my 11 initial ideas. My research was expanded upon and branched into different subjects, such as digital skills and media that were related to the theme of the project. The original 11 ideas produced for my animation were narrowed down and developed into my 3 ideas, and then finally my final idea that was used in my final animation was created. 11 initial ideas. Due to the large amount of ideas I had produced, I will only be mentioning the ideas that were developed further as my 3 developed ideas. These ideas contain the theme of using a time travel paradox. The first of my 11 initial ideas involves a character working on a mysterious machine until an accident occurs and the other characters appear. My second idea differs from the rest as it is a game where the character has to recover an item that was stolen by a time-traveling villain. The third idea that I will mention was the final idea created. This idea involved time travelers in the past accidentally destroying the moon and having to fix it before anyone notices. The second idea was eventually chosen as my final idea, which will be used in my final animation. What inspired me? There were many factors that inspired my animation, such as the research that I had undertaken, the various tutorials on digital skills I had learned, and my experimentation with my ideas. How it was made. My final animation was created by dividing the animation into the different scenes laid out in the storyboard and plan and creating each scene separately. This allowed the scenes that were simpler and easier to create to be completed first and save more of the production time for the more complex scenes. All parts of the final animation were created in a similar way. The background of the scene and any moving layers were created in Adobe Photoshop. The file would then be saved and imported into Adobe After Effects. Then any effects would be added, such as the text effect or the lava lamp effect. If the scene was meant to contain a more complex animation, an example being the character walk cycle that was featured in my final animation, it would be created separately in Photoshop and imported into After Effects. Once each section of the animation was completed, they were imported into Adobe Premiere Pro, put together into the correct order and exported. How the final animation could be developed past the deadline. If I could continue the production of my final animation past the deadline, areas of my animation that I would like to develop further include adding more frames to each of the short animation sequences produced, such as the walk cycle or the fight animation. I believe that this area of my final animation would benefit as the animated movement would look smoother with additional frames to make each movement close together. Another area that could be developed would be to add more detail to each of the illustrations. This would make the animation appear more professional. Additionally, something else that could be developed further could be to include more animation techniques in other scenes that would appear in my animation. Some of these techniques that were not used but could improve my animation if they were included are rotoscoping, a character rig, and different effects from Adobe After Effects. Skills that I believe I could improve further are to create illustrations containing greater detail, use the animation effects in a more organized fashion with better timing, and understanding how to improve the presentation of each frame of the animation.